I want to start with the positives. I do want to try to start with the positive because I was sitting there Sunday afternoon, Alex. Obviously, it's a very sobering thing when you're sitting there the day after and you've had time to really process and analyze. And, I was sitting there and there are positives to pull from this game. That's kind of the weird thing. A lot of the losses, I feel like in the Muschamp era, it just felt like one big negative. There are a lot of positives, in my opinion, to pull from the offensive side of the ball. And I want to start Colin Hill. I really thought him being QB1, I thought he gave me exactly what I expected. Guy looked like a leader. He knew the offense. He was in command of the offense. Was he perfect? No. But if he'd have told me he'd have thrown for 290 yards in his first career start in the SEC, first career start for South Carolina, I think everybody would have signed up for that. Had the nice touchdown throw. Again, I know he had the pick. He's got to be better, but kind of a freak play. Overall, I thought he played well. I thought Shi Smith, who I had posed that question all offseason about, is he ready to be the number one wide receiver? He's never done it. He looked electric on Saturday night, and I think in the backfield you have enough there. Again, none of those guys are Marshawn Lloyd, but I think you have enough there to where you can get some productivity out of the backfield. So, again, starting off on a positive note, and, again, it was not perfect because the offensive line, there's a lot there to be desired. I mean, I talked about on the show, I don't think South Carolina is going to win a football game this year where it doesn't rush for over 100 yards. You rush for 89 yards against Tennessee. Just talk about what you saw from the offense as a whole as far as Colin Hill, the Colin Hill to Shi Smith connection. And if you want to dive into things you want to see more of as well, but what did you see that you like, dislike about the offense as a whole on Saturday night?
I thought, obviously they came out of the gates in a great way, getting that opening touchdown drive. So that was incredibly positive to see. I have absolutely no idea what happened between there and about midway through the third quarter. But, that opening touchdown drive was a good thing to see and something we didn't see a ton of last year. Secondary to that, Shi Smith played out of his mind and looked fantastic. He's certainly somebody that had to step up, and he did in a big way. So those are the two positives, I've taken out of it. Obviously, Tanner Muse had that drop there towards the end, which would have been a big first down. I thought he played well. Running back seemed, we didn't rush the ball well by any stretch of the imagination, but they weren't putting us in big holes either. Offensive line there in the middle of the game definitely left something to be desired. But, the two takeaways were we had an outstanding opening drive, and, Shi Smith played out of his mind, which was awesome to see.
Yeah, and I want to stay on the flip side of that coin, Alex, because, again, obviously there's positives from this game. There's obviously a ton of negatives anytime you lose a game like this. What was shocking to me was just how bad the offensive line played. And I know they played a lot better in the second half, but, again, you finish with 89 yards rushing. You give up 4 sacks on Colin Hill. He was under duress, a fair amount of the night for sure. I would say the pick six was contributed. Him being under duress obviously contributed to that. So I was shocked.
No, I wouldn't put that pick six on him.
Right. I'm just saying I was shocked with how bad the offensive line played when we heard all offseason. I truly believe this was going to be a strength of the South Carolina football team. And it might end up being. Again, I thought they played better in the second half. But it's like I just told you, and I asked you, would you agree that one of my biggest things, this team has got to get better as far as running the football. Again, a Mike Bobo offense, I just don't think it's realistic to go week to week to week asking Colin Hill. He threw the ball 39 times. If you'd have asked me before the game, over under 35 and a half or whatever the number you wanted to give me for passes for Colin Hill, no chance would he's going to get the 39 passes, and sure enough, he did Saturday night. And again, you had to do it, and you scored 27 points, and I do believe 27 should have been enough to win. But I think for this team, Alex, to have any type of success, if you're going to bounce back, to have any type of success in the long run offensively, it's got to start up front for this team.
Certainly. And especially if we're going to go out there and preach, we've got to have a balanced approach. And I think it was, somewhere in the beginning of the fourth quarter, the SEC Network announcers, showed that graphic where 35 and 35. So, if that's what we are going to do, certainly we've got to get better in that aspect. But at the same time, it didn't really seem to be where we were having a ton of success either. So it's just trying to juggle that, obviously, is what you want to do, but when you got live bullets flying over your head, you got to kind of adjust in there. And I guess to your point, I don't know that I would have expected Colin Hill to come out and throw almost 40 passes, but at the same time, I don't know that I would have expected us to rush the ball 35 times for 2.5 yards of rush either. So who's to say on that?
Right. Yeah, I think the big thing, Alex, is, we talked about, or at least I talked about all offseason. I know we talked last week about my fears of the offense and what my biggest concerns were going into kickoff for the offense. And it's so funny. I talked to somebody at halftime of the game Saturday night, and really after the game, you could say the same thing, though. It was almost like my fears were coming to reality in the sense that you watch this offense. And again, we've talked about the positives. I think with Colin Hill, if he has a clean pocket, he's got a really good arm. He showed a lot of zip. There's no question to me, and again, I don't want to get into the whole Helinski versus Hill because believe it or not, I'm sure you've seen on social media, there are still people that are like, hey, are we ever going to put Helinski in? When's Helinski going to win? I'm like, guys, this is Colin Hill's team. I don't know what you want me to say. This is Colin Hill's team. Unless he gets hurt, Colin Hill is going to be, especially if he continues to play like the way he did Saturday night, Colin Hill's your guy moving forward. I mean, don't expect to see Ryan Helinski get in. This is not Steve Spurrier. We're not going to be interchanging quarterbacks. But, again, I like what I saw from Colin Hill. I like Shi Smith overall as a weapon. I think he's probably going to have a good season. And, again, I think there's capable bodies in the backfield. But my biggest fear came to reality in the sense that there just are not a lot of playmakers on this offense. They're just not outside of Shi Smith.
I disagree with that.
You don't think so? Well, see, here's my – I guess I would say specifically at wide receiver. I like Xavier Legette as a 2 option. My biggest fear moving forward, though, 2 wide receivers, 2 touch the football. You have to think at some point, for example, we're going to talk about the Florida game in just a second, but they're going to key in on Shi Smith. You're not going to be able to force feed it to him. He had 10 catches Saturday night. I mean, he's not going to do that every single week. So, again, I think there are athletes on this offense. I mean, Luke Doty didn't even see the field. Dak Joyner didn't touch it. Rico Powers, I know, got targeted but didn't touch it. There are other guys that can get the football for sure, but as far as proven playmakers, that's where you're lacking. And I guess it concerns me, Alex, moving forward that, again, these SEC defensive coordinators, they make a lot of money. They're paid a lot of money to scheme up defenses. And I have to believe, starting this week, certainly, teams are going to say, okay, we're going to take away Shi Smith, beat us in a different way. And I guess what worries me is who's going to be the guy? Who are going to be the guys? Who are going to be the playmakers that are going to step up for this South Carolina offense?
Yeah, and I share that, and I'm with you there just because Xavier and Shi are obviously really good players that you can depend on at the receiver position. Like, what concerns me and what I think happened between that opening drive and then kind of how the flip got scripted and we were moving the ball much better in the second half was it somehow turned into a lot of dives and tunnel screen looking plays from Bobo. And like my fear, and I know we talked about this last week, is just kind of like, what are we getting with Bobo? Like, are we going to run this kind of pro-style conservative action? And, going back to kind of talking about the Ryan thing is like, you got to trust the guys that you trust to get out there and run the plays the right way. And so when I think of like Luke Doty not getting a snap or, Dak Joyner not getting any targets, did Josh Vann have any targets?
He did not. There was one play I remember specifically where Colin Hill was rolling out and he had Josh Vann wide open over the middle, but just didn't pull the trigger. But no, Vann was not targeted. He was not targeted the whole night.
And so like those are like 5 quality options that you could target somewhere. And again, look, we just went through an entire preseason of like COVID restrictions. So obviously you're limited. I don't know what the practice schedule was, but in some capacity, you're going to be limited on what you can do. So it's like, all right, well, get them out there. See what you got. Throw them the ball. Like, put it down the field or, just throw them in there because you're not going to know what you got until you let them go through that. And it's the hesitancy to even do that that is concerning to me. I mean, look, Colin played well, I thought. He's got great zip on the ball. But, you're looking at the stat sheet and looking at all that, I mean, it doesn't seem like an overwhelming difference from Helinski. But at the same time, if he knows the offense better and can make those adjustments at the line, then he needs to be the guy right now. But on the back end of that, not giving Doty, Dak, Josh Vann targets is what's concerning.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't think those guys forgot how to play football between high school and now.
Yeah, I would just say, I've seen a lot of, again, fans saying that, Colin Hill just goes the same guy over and over again. But my biggest thing is like, again, you mentioned those guys that they're but on the flip side, I'm like, who else does he have to throw to really? I mean, Shi Smith is the go-to guy. I mean, I'm not saying, and it's I didn't see maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you saw it differently. I did not see Colin Hill put the ball in harm's way a ton. I didn't feel like there were a ton of throws where I was like, wow, he should not have thrown that ball. Like, a lot of times he was going to Shi Smith. The guy was wide open. I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't like he was throwing in tight coverage. So, I mean, listen, I'm of the thought process, just thinking ahead of this game with Florida. If they're going to give it to you, take it. Shi Smith's an athlete, and he showed Saturday night he can take a 5-yard slant and turn it into a 30-yard touchdown. I mean, he's that type of athlete. But, again, I just wonder, what are you going to do when a defense locks in and says, we're going to double him, you got to beat us with somebody else? I'm just curious as to who he will go to. I think it all really comes back to, though, Alex, offensively, is South Carolina has to shore it up on the offensive line. That was the most maddening part to me. Is, I'll be honest, at times it felt like Tennessee was just the more physical team. It looked like they just wanted it more. They were obviously bullying South Carolina around at the point of attack. And, again, you're asking Colin Hill to do so much with limited resources when you cannot run the football effectively.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you are. But I don't know. I kind of just fall into the camp of, like, we've got these guys standing there on the sideline. Right. So we can put them in. That's fine. We got to be creative in getting the ball to them instead of relying, purely on throwing those quick slants or posts to Shi Smith. So to me, it's more of a scheme thing, especially going up against somebody like Florida who gave up, 634 yards to Ole Miss this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like,
Ton.
that opportunity is going to be there. Mm. So, like, obviously, if Lane Kiffin can go in there and scheme it up to, basically steamroll Florida on the offensive side, like, we've got to be able to come back behind that and say, okay, how did they do this? How do we get the ball in our fastest guy's hands? How do we get the ball to Dak in that tunnel screen instead of maybe throwing that to Shi? I'm not saying we need to take possessions away from him, but at the same time, like, we've got to figure out how to spread that ball around, because you're 100% right. This is what almost every DC in the SEC gets paid $1 million a year to do, is figure out, okay, this is their go-to guy. Let's double him, isolate him over here, bump him off the line, do anything to get him out of his rhythm so they can't just continually do that. But how many sacks did we give up Saturday?
Four sacks. Yeah.
That's not awful. It's not great, but
it's not awful, not great. I mean, it's kind of right in the middle.
Yeah, and the run, like, averaging 2.7 yards a carry is infinitely more troubling than that. So obviously that's something we need to address, and it could be a scheme thing. I would like to think it's not an offensive line problem, but who's to say?
Yeah, I agree with you in the sense of, like, a Dak Joyner, or like a Josh Vann, or like I said, Rico Powers, or whoever it may be. You just got to get guys more touches, because you at least got to keep the defense honest. I mean, we all know, everybody knows you're going to go to Shi Smith, but you just got to keep the defense honest that, like, hey, there are other guys here that will burn you. Because my biggest thing, Alex, and again, you mentioned the 2.7 yards per carry rushing. I think you asked what happened from the first drive to the middle of the third quarter. Well, I thought the biggest problem was you got into a lot of third and longs. And I talked about this before the game. You're just not good enough to play from behind the sticks. When you're getting into first and 15s because of a penalty, or you're getting in more like second and 12s, or, second and 14s, or whatever. This team, to me, is just not good enough to operate from 3rd and 7 or longer. It's just not. There's not enough weapons. And I mean, you can really say that about almost any offense. I mean, when you can get into 3rd and 4s, 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 2s, you just open the playbook up so much more. Your possibility conversion, that percentage goes up so much higher. So it'll be interesting to see, because I think it's going to be a week-by-week thing. Again, what other weapons do step up for this Carolina offense?